Next is a panel discussion on way ahead for solar storage integration and grid management. I would like to invite Sudhir Singh, editor, ETEnergyworld, the Economic Times, to moderate the discussion. Over to you, Sudhir.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome on our platform. I'm Sudhir, and this is a panel discussion on the way ahead for solar storage integration, in fact, RE integration and grid management, with a really great set of panelists that we have today, including Mr. Ruchin Gupta. He's the Additional Commissioner, Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. We have Mr. Upendra Pande. He's the MD of Gujarat Energy Transmission Corporation, JETCO. We also have Mr. Amal Sinha. He's the director BSES, a power distribution company in Delhi. We also have Xiaodong Wang, who is the lead energy specialist for India at the World Bank. And of course, we have Mr. Sudhir Pathak. He's the head of engineering and design and quality assurance at Hero Future Energies. Let me begin this discussion with Mr. Pande here, and welcome to you on this platform, sir. Can you help us set the context and set the tone of this entire discussion by talking about, first of all, your larger view on this entire topic, right? It's a very important topic. A lot is being said and done these days at the national level when it comes to the integration of renewable energy technologies with the grid. And of course, that's understood because of the kind of ambitions that we have as a nation for a clean and green growth, etc. So firstly, what's your overall view on the topic to begin with? And how prepared do you think India's grid infrastructure is in terms of being able to handle the technical challenges that are posed by this integration, of RE technologies? Yeah.
Thank you. I thank you also for giving me an opportunity to speak on this most important subject. In today's, not only in India, it's globally, it is one of the most important subject in the electricity sector. You asked me on what is your view? You said on way ahead for solar storage integration and grid management. Yeah, so I segregate into two parts. First, I say storage integration. Presently, widely, 2-3 important storage systems are in place in the world. Most talked about is battery storage, and then pump storage, hydropower, that has been in place for long. Green hydrogen, that is another way to look at it. So I'll just briefly talk about these 2-3 items quickly. Battery storage is the most talked about subject. I mean, everywhere now we are discussing it, it's considered one of the most important subject for. Whenever we talk about RE, I mean, storage comes up first. This battery storage, I feel it is still evolving, mainly because of its high cost. This high cost is becoming an impediment in implementing it. But as things are moving ahead, probably will achieve further penetration in this. I feel distributed battery storage should be a solution to this small scale battery storage at strategic location, that is near generation or near substations, existing substations, or near even load center. That should help a great way to mitigate this issue. I'll talk about a small thing in the state of Gujarat. So I'm slightly taking off track for a moment. State of Gujarat has innovated a couple of things. One of them is Surya Shakti Kisan Yojana. This was launched in 2018. This scheme enabled farmers to get connected, those who are already connected to the grid. This was meant for them to get connected to the grid to generate electricity on their own by installing solar panels in their farms. That they use for their captive consumption. At the same time, surplus can be fed to the grid. So that way, they use their own generation and they can earn also by injecting into the grid. Then in Gujarat, we have promoted solar rooftop, that is on both the things like in industries as well as domestic. And so far we have achieved 1,640 megawatt rooftop. Then I'll quickly talk about this other, which I was mentioning, storage pumped storage hydro power.
Yeah.
CA in one of its report has indicated 96 gigawatt potential for pumped storage hydropower. But so far, we have not even tapped 3.5 gigawatt in the country. Whereas around the world, about 169, 170 gigawatt is in place, pump storage. So we can focus on this also. This is a proven technology. It has been in place for long. So somehow if it can be tapped further, it will help us in a great way. It has got its tremendous lot of benefits in maintaining the grid. But slightly cost is a kind of prohibitive thing here. Initial cost is high, and then recovery rate is also very slow. If somehow we can try to address this issue commercially, probably this will help us in a large way. And then green hydrogen, though it is not directly presently this way, but I mean, this could be considered as a solution to this. Another small thing I would say, instead of really rushing towards battery storage or any kind of storage, can we think of in a different way? Can we think of matching load with the RE generation? Solar generation is much more predictable. So if somehow we can, I mean, make our load pattern aligning with the solar generation, probably this can help us a lot. I'll give an example of Gujarat. What we have done here under a scheme called Kisan Suryodaya Yojana, during the time when we get solar generation maximum, we have shifted agricultural load during daytime. So it has created, really given a great help to farmers, which they were getting earlier in night time. Now they get power in daytime. So one way they are benefited, they are having this kind of convenience and comfort. At the same time, grid is also benefited this way by utilizing solar power during this time, and by utilizing it during daytime. To that extent, storage requirement has been obviated. Same thing if we extend it for another kind of loads, say for example, industrial, or even to some extent domestic load, this can further help us in achieving it. Differential tariff for peak and off-peak hours, that can further help in making this load pattern as near as possible to the generation curve. So I feel these 2-3 things, which is already we are implementing in the state of Gujarat, there we have already shifted about 2000 megawatt load from night to daytime using this solar generation through Kisan Suryodaya Yojana. And when it has not been implemented fully in the state, which is meant to be there for entire state, all 33 districts of the state. So when it comes in place, probably we'll have tremendous advantage once it is fully in place. So taking experience of this, I think it should help us in a great way. And then challenges, you said, certainly. I mean, RE is not so simple thing. It has got its inherent challenges. But I mean, this technology definitely should help us in mitigating it. Renewable energy, we are having about 27% in the country now. And coal mainly, which contributes more than 50%, its flexibility is limited. Flexibility in ramping is possible through gas, which is very limited, 6%. And we had a lot of challenges recently, some time back, related to gas generation. Hydro, of course, we have about 12%, but they are located in a very remote places. So that also everywhere, every time they cannot help us. So indeed, problems are there, but there are methods through which we are taking care of our grid, particularly through REMC, Renewable Energy Management Centers. 11 such centers are already in place, and 2 more energy management center, one for Telangana and Andaman and Nicobar, that is underway, that is under execution, and I hope it will come up pretty soon. They will help us certainly in handling our grid effectively with the RE integration. Yeah.
Okay, fine. And so what basically happens with these REMCs is that they manage your load profile, etc., and matching generation with demand. Technically, they handle the technical part.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It predicts it and then further it manages manages it.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to specifically, first of all, thanks for the great comment. You've talked about a lot of really important things, starting from battery and pumped hydro as the options that we have, and then you're saying green hydrogen is again one option that we have. In fact, green hydrogen is developing, and at the national level too, we have a mission announced, but I think we are still far away from, slightly far away from seeing large commercial projects. You're talking about distributed battery storage, no doubt, again, a very important intervention. But I really like the fact that you're talking about how, regulatory interventions like distributed, differential tariffs, or being able to match demand with solar generation because it is more predictable, etc. And REMCs. Is there any other specific Gujarat specific initiative that you want to talk about, or should we move on to other speakers? I'm asking because you have to leave, and is there anything that you want covered more from the scheme point of view, or that will be all?
The important thing was I was talking about Kisan Suryodaya Yojana that has really helped us a lot. I mean, that can be replicated and can be spread further. I already briefed about this Kisan Suryodaya Yojana. That is a really good thing. I mean, it can really obviate to a large extent the need of storage.
Okay.
Probably in a couple of years, we'll get benefit of this when the entire system will be in place. So it is basically a transmission system which we are placing in the state to integrate and provide solar generation to farmers. And future, hopefully, we'll be able to replicate it for other loads also.
Yeah. Okay, fine. That's also, I'm sure it's also linked some way to the national schemes for Saubhagya, etc. that we have, or the solar pump scheme that we have at the national level, agricultural pump sets. Is there a link there or not?
Saubhagya is meant for basically a discount, whereas this Kisan Suryodaya Yojana, though it is meant for basically farmers, as the name suggests, but is implemented through a transmission network through which power would be given to farmers.
Okay, fine. Okay. So moving on in this discussion, we also have Ruchin Gupta here, and a very, very well-known name. He is credited with, having drafted a lot of the, the documents, the draft documents for bidding, etc. And he is known for his understanding of the power and renewable energy sectors. Let me ask you, Mr. Gupta, Mr. Pande was talking about, regulatory interventions like differential tariff, time of the day tariffs, etc. What, according to you, are the regulatory challenges in energy storage, in the overall energy storage landscape, the way it is currently in our country and how it is evolving? What are the regulatory challenges associated with it? And what do you think could be the best ways to promote storage without bringing the additional financial impact on discoms? Yeah.
The energy storage is rather a novelty. When the present Electricity Act was drafted, the concept of energy storage was not there. It has only come up as more and more RE is becoming part of the grid. So if you see Section 62 and Section 63 of the Electricity Act, wherein tariff is being mentioned, it talks about tariff for supply of electricity by a generating company to a distribution licensee, supply of tariff for transmission of electricity. It doesn't talks about a scenario wherein storage is set up as a standalone asset and the services are being utilized by a distribution licensee or by let's say a transmission licensee. Similarly, recently Ministry of Power has come up with some clarification wherein they have said that if storage is set up by a generator, it will be treated at par with a generating asset, and if it is set up by a transmission licensee or by a distribution licensee, it shall be treated as per the status of its owner. So again, perhaps we have left out a scenario wherein the storage is set up as a standalone asset. So to me, the regulatory or other kind of challenges are there for a standalone energy storage asset. How its charges shall be governed within the framework of Electricity Act are yet to be seen. Perhaps a major challenge for these standalone energy storage assets may also come from the taxation side. What kind of tax treatment will be given to such an asset is still not known. I believe all these issues may unfold as there is an implementation of such projects. Perhaps the first project may come up through Solar Energy Corporation of India, which has issued an RFS for 1,000 megawatt hour energy storage system on standalone basis. And as we have one or two such projects, all legal, regulatory, and taxation related challenges may come before us, and along with that, the solutions may also come. You're asking about how we can really encourage energy storage system. See, energy storage system increases the cost of the project, and so ultimately the cost of power goes up. That brings a burden on the DISCOM. So one way is, of course, that the government of India, or any government for that matter, gives a financial subsidy, viability gap funding to the project developer, so that the project cost comes down and the ultimate tariff also goes down. One other way is perhaps to change the entire economic construct in which renewable energy is being supplied so far. The RE power so far was supplied on as is where is basis. As it is produced, you have to buy it. And also it was given must run status. Since the entire expenditure in case of RE is more in terms of the capex, almost 95% or so, and hardly 4-5% OPEX. So in case of any back down, the compensation we paid is 100% of the tariff. Now this brings a scenario for the DISCOM wherein even if they don't want the power, they have to buy it, and if they say no, any which way, they have to pay the full tariff. So there is absolutely no economic independence. So as I said, one way to encourage storage is to change this entire construct. We can make this RE on lines with a dispatchable power, schedulable dispatchable power, and also bring in concept of a two-part tariff. I'm talking about all these things because one such framework we have already prepared. When I was with Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, that time I had prepared one such framework. MNRE is still evaluating and may come out with one such bid very soon, as I have been given to understand.
This basically means treating RE power just like thermal power, right? Because we have storage available.
So just like any conventional power, the moment you make it dispatchability mandatory, it cannot happen without coupling it with storage. Yes. And if you also bring in a two-part tariff, then the load on the DISCOM goes down. What we are thinking here is, since for the generator, he wants full tariff, because since unlike thermal, the entire expense is the fixed charge. What we are thinking, that whatever power is not taken by the DISCOM, that much power the generator can sell in the market, exchange, or a third party, and recover the charges from such third party sale. So essentially, by evolving a new economic construct and without even giving any separate financial subsidy, storage can very well be brought in a part of the grid system.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very relevant and very important comments, Mr. Gupta there. Let me quickly turn to Xiaodong here, and she has been listening to this entire conversation. First of all, what is your view on this issue of managing the high cost and technical difficulties that generally crop up with implementation of storage projects with solar, right? And do you see India as a country, when you look at it, do you see us taking the right steps towards managing these issues properly?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, so first of all, let me say that the storage really play an important role when Indian government, the Prime Minister announced the 500 gigawatt renewable target net zero by 2070. And we actually did the energy transition study that shows that even under the current government policy and target scenario, by 2050, there requires about more than 200 gigawatt battery storage capacity. And for accelerated decarbonization, that would increase about almost 380 gigawatt battery storage by 2050. So this is really the key to accommodate high penetration of renewable. Now, you ask about the issues, how to make it happen, So to me, there are two top issues. One is really the regulatory issue, which Mr. Gupta already touched upon. The second is the cost reduction, the need for cost reduction, right? So let me talk about the first one first to complement what Mr. Gupta said. We fully agree about this two-part tariff suggestion. Actually, Ministry of Power solicited a recommendation for battery storage policy a few months ago. And we just actually talked to the Power Secretary a few days ago. And we talk about the importance for compensate the private sector to put into the battery storage, value the battery storage services. If you look around the world, the countries who has this kind of policy that can really take up, launch the battery storage, like the United States, the FERC order number 841 really played instrumental role to take, make the battery storage market take off in America, because it requires the wholesale market to compensate for battery storage services in the capacity market, job power generation and salary services, right? So I know that this will increase the cost. That was the concern of the government, right? But I think the Indian government is trying to launch the salary service market. So I think that is the right direction. And we hope that, battery storage can be compensated in the salary service market. And also the time of use, in terms of peak off peak. And that is also really critical to incentivize the distribution side behind the meter, battery storage. So that's on the policy side. I think that is really the fundamental. Without that, there'll be few investors to get into this market, right? Now, the government is really keen to push down the cost. I think that is really very valid priority, right? So for that, I think there are I would suggest three approach. First, of course, is the concessional financing where we come in, right? So the World Bank is now preparing $1 billion multi-phased programmatic approach to finance battery storage in India. So the first phase is really trying to precisely that, to bring the concessional financing to trying to drive down the cost, right? But I think no matter it's concessional financing to subsidy, there's a limited amount of public funds, right? So I think ultimately the second, I would say, is really Indian exemplary kind of to drive down the cost of solar PV through competitive auction. And I think that is really the sort of a magic to go. I know you have done some 24/7 this kind of auction, renewable plus battery plus storage, right? So and the second is doing some large procurement. So I think this auction is another way to go to drive down the cost, just like what you did with solar PV, and did the same thing for battery storage. The third thing, my suggestion is really looking into a domestic manufacturing, because India is really a manufacturing powerhouse, right? And many countries actually pushing for this battery storage, not just for renewable, but also this is the future, right? This is the game changer for the future. So I see many large emerging economies getting this market because they want to then become the competitive, have a competitive industry to create jobs, and then you're ahead of the game, right? Because this thing going to have a global demand, very soon. So if India started manufacturing, that not only drive down costs for India, but also can benefit work. So I think this is the approach that will drive down the cost. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Xiaodong. Very, very important points there. And I turn to Mr. Sinha here. He has been listening to this conversation. And so firstly, I wanted to ask you, as a distribution company, which is widely known as a success story of reforms when it comes to power distribution, what is your view on this, the current state of affairs when it comes to integration of renewable energy with the grid, with storage, of course? And second, I also want to understand, the kind of points that have been made so far by Xiaodong and also Mr. Gupta about tackling regulatory issues through interventions like two-part tariff or compensating battery storage through other markets, and how to drive down costs, Xiaodong is saying that we can look at concession finance, competitive auction, manufacturing. How do you look at these two things? So first of all, your initial comment on how do you look at this entire space of integration of RE with storage and in with the grid? And secondly, how do you comment on these specific things that have been talked about so far? Yeah.
Thank you, Sudhir. And it's a big opportunity to express yourself on this forum. See, we are running a distribution company successfully in Delhi. And we have been one of the foremost DISCOM who have taken keen interest into this transition, energy transition, what we call. So just to give you a context, traditionally we have been handling power from a unidirectional way. The power was coming from the thermal and hydro stations, and we were supplying. But with renewable, of course, there would be generators, but there would be a lot of distributed energy sources which would be created. And that is a big challenge for a distribution company. In fact, the energy transition which we are seeing now, which globally has been seen, and it is now currently happening in India, that has one major challenge is renewable, which of course has to come along with the storage, as we have talked about. The coming of the electric vehicles and also the smart infrastructure, whether we call of smart meters and smart grids, all these things are coming together. So the role of a distribution company becomes very, very important, because ultimately they are the change agents for this transition. And they have to see how they can evolve themselves, grow themselves in terms of more technology, more digitalization, and then roll out these plans. So for any distribution company, this would be a huge challenge. And of course, there would be global learnings, but as has been pointed out, the development of the electricity business in India and the various challenges would be different. Among different states, there would be different challenges. You have different challenges in urban areas, you have different challenges in rural areas. So all these challenges are there, but then government has taken an objective, which is a very noble objective in the current scenario when we are talking about climate change and environment. And initially we were talking about 450 gigawatts of renewable. Now, as per the latest COP26, we are talking about 500 gigawatts. And a lot of things has happened in the last few years in this space. The integration has actually started. The kind of promotion which has been given with the support of the government on the generation of generating capacity, creating capacity for renewable is something which is we should feel proud of. The kind of the cost optimization which has been done in the generation of solar and renewable Today, we are getting at almost about 2 rupees 50 paisa. Even we have tenders in Gujarat where we have got to almost 2 rupees. So that is a big opportunity that you are trying to get something new into the system and at a much reduced cost. Of course, we all know that renewable has a major challenge because it is a variable power. It is not which is consistent, and there are time zones in which the power will come, like solar would come more in the daytime, wind will come more in the night time. And for this, managing this variability, you need something where you can store power based on whatever is your load, varying from city to urban to rural and different states. You need to somehow save the extra power which is being generated by the solar and wind, which is being done in the form of battery. So battery technology is also evolving. A lot of things are happening in this front, and it's not that it's happening parallelly. It's not that in the West they have achieved the highest level of perfection. This is something which is evolving, and it will evolve in the next few years. And I'm quite sure as the demand or as the integration of renewable will get into the system, the energy storage cost will go down. And with the introduction of electric vehicles, that would also be a huge potential where you can store energy. Because it's not the traditional, battery storage we can talk about. Each vehicle will have certain amount of energy which will be stored, and that can also be feeding to the grid. You can imagine like sitting in a city, Delhi, where you have lakhs of vehicles and various vehicles having storage within the vehicle, and those points are of capacity are available. So the challenge for a distribution company is how you can manage this kind of variability, how you can manage the distributed energy which is being created, like rooftop solar, which is being created. And we have done as a distribution company, we took a league into this, and we have gone to various missions to, generate awareness amongst the consumers. And there has been a very, very good response. In Delhi, we have created almost about 150 megawatt of rooftop solar. And the people are quite, eager to know how they can use this power. People are getting conscious that they want to get more environment friendly. They want to contribute to the society. So all these expectations are there. And there, I think there are huge technical challenges, that how do we integrate renewable or the distributed energy resources, the battery storage or the electric vehicle storage, and integrate into into a system where you can manage your load in a certain way. Your assets are properly loaded. The load balances is being monitored not only at the grid level, it has to be monitored at the DT level, it has to be monitored down to the consumer level, so that you don't have any unfortunate events which may happen because of extra flow of electricity. And I think if you see from how we will do it, there are a lot of things which are happening. And broadly, I would say that there we have to create more flexibility into the generation. Why I say flexibility into the generation? Because each of the distribution companies have already a large tie-up of the conventional power, say, for example, thermal. Now, because if you have to absorb renewable power into the system, you have to create more flexibility for running the thermal plants. The government has taken steps into this regard also, like they have reduced the technical minimum for operation of plant to almost about 55% now. So that gives you some headroom to absorb the renewable power. As we go into, because the renewable would be a must run, so the flexibility will come through absorption of the extra power in the storage. So the flexibility in generation is required. Similarly, you need flexibility in transmission of this power. So you would have battery storage attached with major transmission corridors, so that it's not that everything is stored at the distribution leg. You may have to store something at the generation leg, you may have to store something during the transmission, and then comes the distribution companies, where again storage becomes very important. So you have to have flexibility in distribution system also. We have experimented that, putting battery storage. We are doing some pilots in Delhi where we have used battery storage along with some of our overloaded DTs, distribution transformer. So whenever the DT is overloaded, we try to use it from the battery storage. So these pilots are running. These are small beginnings, but I think we are all going in the right direction. The important thing which a regulator can do is how we can shift this load in a manner through fixation of tariff, so that the extra flow of energy can be absorbed in a certain manner. Like in Delhi, if the rates are lower in the night time when we have extra power, like if wind power is coming, my traditional conventional power is also coming. If we have some lower rates for charging your vehicle, so people would tend to charge their vehicle during that hour. So that is how you can kind of create a time of use tariff infrastructure, tariff rates, whereby consumers are encouraged to use charging at those point of times when the rates are lower, and they can also inject into the grid when the rates are high. In fact, in Western countries, in many of the advanced countries, people are getting reverse bill. That means they are getting a payment by the distribution companies for who are managing their consumption in a certain way, because they are feeding the grid. So all these permutation combinations are there, and I think it's a huge challenge, but it's a huge opportunity for the entire value chain of the power sector, how we can actually take benefits out of this. I must compliment the government for taking various steps in this direction in a mission mode. Recently, if you see the way the power markets in India are developing, this is something which is remarkable. The way real-time markets have been introduced, the way green ahead markets are being introduced. So things are getting in place, and that is the spirit which should feel proud. And I think we as a generation have a huge opportunity and a responsibility, so that we can make this transformation and transition very smooth, and we can get the best of technology. We need to have more and more digitization, smart initiative, so that you have to see this entire transition in a very holistic manner. You can't see simply solar. The renewable, the electric vehicle, the smart initiatives, the power markets are methods in improving our forecasting of demand. All these aspects are involved. How effectively you can manage digitization, because many of the things that the data would be so huge, so it may not be possible to manage this data on a by human. We have to depend on more and more digitalization and digitization of various information, so that you can take help from IT and other technology developments. So this is a scenario which I wanted to submit as we are experiencing as a distribution company. One last point I wanted to say, that so far traditionally we have been managing the supply side of electricity. Now we need to manage the demand side of electricity. In any state, for instance in Delhi, if the demand today is about say 7,000 megawatt, it would be very difficult if this demand goes increasing at a rate of 6% annually. You can't imagine to manage a power supply in Delhi if the demand goes to 15,000 megawatt or 20,000 megawatt. Not because of anything else, there is no space to put your infrastructure. And of course, there is a huge cost to this. So we need to create awareness amongst the consumers how they can manage their demand more effectively. And there again, a lot of learnings are there and a lot of opportunities are there. And I think government in one of a recent meetings where they are trying to make a vision for 2047, they are discussing these aspects where demand side management would also become one of the main drivers for managing this transition, which we are talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. A lot of important things you've said. For example, you're talking about how battery technology is evolving. And, in future, when electric mobility becomes more of a norm, we will have, vehicles moving around with a lot of storage. And then the challenge will be for discoms to only manage this kind of variability that gets created. We're also talking about, very, very futuristic kind of scenarios where flexibility in generation and transmission is being managed in real time, etc. And how we need to have more of digitization for things like shifting load through tariff fixation. Very, very, very ambitious, planning, so to speak, this would require. Moving on, I want to ask Mr. Pathak here, you have listened to the entire, kind of discussion that has happened so far. And there's specific regulatory interventions also that have been announced. What, according to you, what is your view on this topic, and what according to you, are some of the regulatory interventions that are, that are generally required for a healthy integration of the grid with RE technologies? And where do we stand as a nation when it comes to this particular aspect?
Thanks, Sudhir. So thanks for the opportunity. First of all, I will just try to take you to a context, because I'm being from the technical background. That when I started my career 27 years back in NTPC, maybe many of the audience which was not born during that time, we were born in the era where grid failure was a very common phenomenon. Okay, we always used to find that, okay, the grid has collapsed and we are sitting in dark, we are just playing around. So during that particular scenario, the basic reason for the grid failure was complete grid mismanagement, right? And when we say, I will just try to throw upon some technicalities on that part. Whenever we say grid mismanagement, that means demand is not equal to supply or vice versa. So at times, the SEBs were drawing more and the suppliers were supplying less, or at times suppliers supplying more than the demand, and a lot of frequency excursions used to happen. So that used to be the time, and then ABT regime came, and then there was a good regulation which came into the picture, and then that led to very stable grid. So, so I will try to break down the grid management into broadly two parts, right? So first is like active power management, and which we typically see as a frequency management. Second is called the reactive power management, which is basically a more or less called a voltage, a kind of regulation of voltage management. So in the active power management, again, there are broadly two sub segments, whereas one is called the steady state active power, like during the normal course of time where your demand matches the supply active power, or what we say in megawatt. And second is like if there is a dynamic state or there is a transient state, there's a fault somewhere, how quickly the grid can be resilient to that. How quickly grid can come back or isolate. There was an islanding scheme used to happen where it can come back and still your grid remains intact. The faulty portion is taken out. Second part is called reactive power management, wherein you need a reactive power source of what we say as MV or MVRH, or you can say the reactive power KVRH kind of scenario. because you know that the industries are guzzlers of reactive power, like big mills, big motors. They take a lot of inductive load, right? So the sources should be capable to supply that kind of reactive. Otherwise, your voltage will collapse. As the voltage collapses, there will be excursions of voltage and then ultimately collapsing of the grid. So looking into those past scenarios when you used to have a conventional resources like thermal power plants, or gas power, or coal-fired plants, or even to an extent hydro, wherein if I take an example of active power management, so if you are running into a closed loop control system, wherein you can predict your output, you can control your output. For controlling the output, you should have the controlled input. So like in case of the gas, thermal or hydro, you have the controlled fuel, coal, gas or water. And you had a wonderful complicated control loop, closed loop system where you can fine tune your loops. And there is a governance system, there's a governing system, a droop system, which will lead to quick, swift changes of the active power set points, right? And even during the dynamic conditions, you had a wonderful excitation system, right? Wherein you can control the excitation by changing the DC offsets, and immediately you can you can control your reactive power pumping. Okay, so in both ways you had a complete control on the grid and on the demand side, as Sinha sir has told very beautifully, that demand side management, where distribution companies, based upon their forecasting and the regulations and the penalties, they used to regulate their demand side. Now discom is still the same, right? Now the scenario, what is happening, that now the conventional sources are gradually changing into RE. So let me tell you that there is a term called spinning reserve, okay, or there is a term called dynamic response. As there is a transience in the system, by changing the droop settings immediately, because the thermal generators are the system which are having prime movers or the inertia, right? So they have a mechanical inherent inertia. Whenever there is something happening without any intervention, it will automatically pump extra power through its own inertia, right? Okay, and so which was the natural or inherent part of that. And if you have a sudden voltage up and down, you will dynamically, you have a frequency response, you have a reactive power response where you can control the voltages. Now, when the penetration of RE is increasing and the thermal conventional system is slightly coming at par, this balance is slightly getting disbalanced, because now what is happening, let me tell you that solar, or for that matter wind, I will take both of them as a kind of primary sources. So they are good source of power, right? But they are very poor source of fault and very poor source of inertia. So that means whenever this power, they are very good when they are pumping power, whatever sun god or pavan god is there, they are simply giving the output, but they are not predictable on active power side. Second thing, on the reactive power side, which is also very important phenomena, which all the August panel here, they know that the solar modules or the inverters, or for that matter, the wind turbine generators, they are not good in to that level in responding to the reactive power requirements, because they themselves are the guzzlers of the reactive power, unlike thermal plants.
So what I'm saying, that is why we need storage systems to take care of that inertia part of it, the lack of inertia part.
Yeah, so I'm coming to this part that yes, because of this thing, now we need some components which can help us. So that is called a storage. So if you have a battery storage or pump storage, whatever, these storage components, they are very good on both the sides, or even the three sides. One, on the active power continuance, predictability. Second, on even the dynamic response, they can immediately support any kind of transient responses, and also on the reactive power. So that's why this is the right time when this is very important, that the battery storage should come into the picture, and then it should be integrated. Now the problem is, so now as of now, as you told about the regulatory part, so we know that, as the August panel has told, that right now that battery storage is extremely costly. Okay, so directly jumping into it and making RTC kind of requirement, As of now, that will have an additional burden on the DISCOM. So from that perspective, what I perceive that there should be some kind of what Richard Gupta sir has said, that some kind of VGF support, if it is being given, or maybe if some kind of incentive is given, that if I am helping for the demand response,
some kind of initial handholding is required.
Yeah, some kind of initial handling is required. Like we want to give a kind of demand response incentive. If I'm giving a kind of an ancillary services, there should be an additional incentive to the developers. So from that perspective, this will really help in making this ahead. And as we see more of battery storage demand in the market, automatically the scale will increase and the price will reduce. Yeah, so that is very, very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pathak. Thank you for that really great and slightly too technical comment. I was just hoping against hope that it doesn't become too technical for other speakers, but then it's absolutely fine. Let me turn again to Mr. Gupta here, and I must say, when you talk, in your initial comment, which you gave in the earlier part of the discussion, very, very important observations you made. Right, about how RE can be made dispatchable. Why not? That's a thought that never occurs to anyone. One of the things that people talk about, the first thing that comes to mind, the moment we start talking about the future grid, right, where from the point of view of RE, is this really ambitious project of one sun, one world, one grid, right? Can you help us understand what is the way ahead there? Where do we stand? What is the way ahead? And how the Indian government's efforts and even IS's efforts and its role, how they can be reconciled in this regard. Yeah.
See, one sun, one world, one grid, or OSOWOG, as we normally call it in the ministry, is a product of Honorable Prime Minister's vision. There are broadly four aspects to this concept. One is the technical aspect. Second, the regulatory aspect, the economic or the commercial aspect, and finally, the geopolitical aspect. Now, for the first three, the technical aspect, that means in different regions, the grids are functioning at different voltage levels, different frequencies. Similarly, the regulations are different in different places. What are the provisions present in India perhaps are different from those prevalent in other countries or areas. The when I say economic or the commercial aspect, that brings or takes us to the very core of this entire concept, that any power will flow from one region to another only when the complementarities support the economics of this entire mechanism. Until and unless there is a price support system for power which is produced at one place and for which there are no takers at that place, and the other place is more than willing to procure that power, the entire concept will not be successful. So for these three first concepts, as I said, the aspects, the technical aspect, regulatory issues, and the commercial aspect, the Government of India through Ministry of New and Renewable Energy and Ministry of Power has set up a task force, which is a task force and under which certain subcommittees have also been created. The overall objective is to actually visit or interact with various countries, see which are the low-hanging fruits, with what regions we can first go ahead with regard to the integration, how we can resolve the various regulatory issues and also the technical challenges, because until and unless the technical challenges are resolved, power from one grid to another grid cannot flow. So that's these three areas are broadly the areas where the government of India is focusing. Now, if I come to the last and perhaps the most challenging one is the geopolitical aspect, and that's where the role of International Solar Alliance becomes highly important. ISA being an international organization having mandate under what should I say, having mandate to interact with various countries and to take forward the renewable energy, solar particularly, the role of ISA becomes very important to create a broad consensus on this one sun, one world, one grid. And I believe both Indian government and International Solar Alliance are working together in this regard. Once the government of India, through these two ministries, the Renewable Energy and Ministry of Power, comes up with a more plausible framework of interconnecting grids, the geopolitical part would need to be resolved. So that's how I broadly see a way forward in this regard, and both Government of India and International Solar Alliance, as I just now mentioned, are working together to take it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta, for that kind of status update on the project and its importance. I want to ask Xiaodong here, what in your initial comment, you were talking about how concessional finance is one of the ways in which we can address the cost issue, right? And that's also one of the ways in which the bank can help the country. What are the other ways in which World Bank can help or support India while the nation deals with this really crucial challenge of RE integration with the grid? So that's something I'll be glad if you could comment upon.
Yeah, so actually, if you broaden it to renewable energy grid integration, there's a many, I would say, tool in the toolbox. Okay, and the battery storage is only one of them, and actually is probably towards the high cost spectrum solution, right? So if we look around the world, we have done a lot of these renewable grid integration work in many other countries. So the tools, ranging from, the proactive power system planning, like what Texas did, right? You don't just build where the renewable energy resources are, then you forget about the demand, then you have this issue, right? We have seen this in many other countries. So in Texas, for example, they do this integrated planning. They do this corridor transmission first, and then they look at the demand, and they look at the resource. So that's really important. Also between generation, transmission, between fossil fuel, renewable. So those all need the coordinated planning. So that's the first thing. The second thing is really about the policy regulatory framework. What we have seen, this kind of conducive policy for renewable grid integration, we call it broad and fast. Meaning the broad balancing area, you don't just do one region, you have this interconnection between regions. And then faster scheduling. I know India has been now doing 15 minutes scheduling, looking to 5 minutes. So those are definitely in the right direction. Optimized dispatch, and grid code. We talk about the compensation for salary services and those kind of things. I personally think this is really the key to revolutionize the power system, not like before the fossil fuel is the base load, and then you need to in order for renewable to come on, you need to really change the power system, change the whole regulatory system. And the third is really the increase the flexibility in the generation. So the storage is definitely one. I think one of the panelists also talk about pump storage, and that is really another way. But we are now also looking into some other ways to make the generation system more flexible. For example, to bundle hydro with solar wind, this hybrid system, and that even renewable hybrid, and also the coal power plants can also make it really flexible. But that needs some retrofitting, in Denmark, for example, that can be, ramping up very quickly, but that needs some retrofitting. So that also can make it flexible. And the fourth way is really about the transmission, most kind of, both kind of expansion transmission, but also digitize, make it smart, everything. And then there's the demand response, right? So these are, I would say, kind of comprehensive toolbox. So what we bring is really, I think, one is this policy support, the global knowledge, is technical assistance. That's kind of we are doing a lot of those now. For example, the wholesale market reform, the battery storage policy. We are working on the transmission, the solar park infrastructure. So that's kind of the policy bucket. And the second is really, kind of the financing, right? We're a financier, so concessional financing plus, our own IBRD financing. It's kind of concessional financing too, but we also bring in a very kind of soft term, 40-year loan with no interest rate. It's kind of very concessional terms financing to come in. And the third, we kind of proud ourselves to be knowledge bank, right? So we kind of bring in global knowledge to help India. So that's kind of the role we play. We also have quite a wide range of finance instruments, not just concessional financing, but we also can do guarantee. And we also leverage significant private sector investment. So for example, what we have done in India is a $100 million solar park share infrastructure project, have leveraged 40 times private sector investment. So these are the things I think we can bring onto the table. Yeah. And I also want to compliment what the Mr. Singh, Sinha was talking about the renewable battery storage, but also the electric vehicle. So this is another part, very important part of the equation. So under this $1 billion battery storage plus the e-mobility kind of program we're in, we're also trying to help finance the charging infrastructure as well. So these are all kind of interconnect together. Yeah, thank you.
Xiaodong, thanks for that great comment. And you're basically saying that a lot of different things have to come together, and a lot of different policy options, technological options, etc. They have to come together to make it happen. What I wanted to understand by way of clarification is this $1 billion kind of support that you're talking about, World Bank. This is specifically for India, right? And over what period of time?
Yeah, so this is specifically for India, $1 billion. And we're hoping to spread out. This is multi-phase approach. So we hope to spread out into 4 tranches. So we are now preparing the first tranche, $250 million. And that was likely to specifically focus on battery storage, concessional financing to buy down the cost. And then we're also hoping to finance the charging infrastructure and electric vehicles as well. So I would say, for each of our project lifetime is about 4 to 5 years, right? So this is a multi-phase, will be 3 to 4 tranches, 4 projects. So we'll stretch, 5, 8, 10 years. It's a programmatic approach, trying to put down a substantial amount of money to push forward battery storage agenda for India. Yeah.
Okay. And this is by way of loans, etc., right? Concessional finance, right?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Turning to Mr. Sinha here, so you have talked about in the initial comment that you made, you talked about a lot of, ambitions, so to speak, right? The futuristic grid. I want to understand from you what typically are the kind of challenges that distribution company managers typically face when this kind of large scale integration happens with technologies like solar, which are intermittent. and what are the solutions available? You may have partly touched upon this in the initial comment, but if you can, maybe tell us something more from the BSES specific experience. Yeah.
Yeah, in my earlier comments, I have made a brief about it on a macro level, but on a BSES level, the main issue is that when the RE integration comes in, there is a kind of unpredictable variation in generation by solar and wind, which we need to manage. And the issue is that we normally have to program our power availability in a certain time frame. So one issue is how you can ensure that you can maintain reliability and quality of supply. That means the power making available if some disruption happen in generation of renewable energy. So as of now, we don't have very robust mechanism where alternate power with high ramp up rate to meet such sudden contingencies can be programmed. Similarly, the day ahead or intraday markets and even the real time markets are not still maturing, and like in real market, we can probably get power if we can get something, but that also has a time lag of about 1.5 hours. So we need to see how these markets mature in terms of day ahead and intraday, and certainty of if you have a green quantum in that, how certain you are. Storage, of course, we have discussed that we need to get how we can actually make it more cheaper. We are trying to do some kind of working with in collaboration with SECI to manage one of the smaller grids on a 20 megawatt battery capacity. But again, the viability gap funding is something which is a challenge, which is not easily available. The regulatory process and systems are still not very much, akin, or they are more prepared to manage this. The priorities are not there. So though there is a push from the national goal side, but the implementation part, the role of the regulator becomes very, very important. And ultimately, as a distribution company, the cost which I incur has to be a pass-through. So how you can recover your cost, that is a big question which we need to address. So internationally, what we have seen that like solar or wind, rather than taking separately, now we are talking about firm power, renewable firm power, which is if you can get RTC so that the generator himself is managing the variability, that is something in which we can probably manage. Pump storage, hydro is another opportunity which we are exploring with our hydro generator like THDC. And as I explained earlier, we are trying to somehow integrate the rooftop solar coupled with behind the meter battery storage system in a kind of a microgrid scenario, on a small scale. So those interventions, even as I said, with the distribution transformer, we are trying to put up DT. So all these things it's still a learning stage. We are doing a lot of pilot runs on this. So this is regarding availability. The other side, as I said, was the demand side management, where we are the first company in India who started a behavioral energy efficiency program, which is prevalent in the West. And we took about 200,000 consumers, where we tried to give them a benchmark for their energy consumption with their consumption of peer similar consumers. And we tried to encourage them that how they can save power. So these demand response and demand management also becomes very part, and as I said, it is an interplay of all these activities. The other important thing what Sudhir Pathak ji was mentioning is on the grid, because the grid code has become very, very stringent, and now you have to really monitor your grid on a 15-minute time slot. Currently, the slots are fixed up to 6 slots. So any variability at the grid, if there is any change in the frequency or voltage beyond a certain parameter, you get into a penalty zone. So there, the forecasting model has to be very accurate. The metering of the power inflow and the accountability of that has to be improved. So all these small steps we are taking. Smart meter will be a big initiative, going forward, where like government has mandated that by 2025, all the meters have to be smart. So smart meter probably will give us some window of controlling the demand aspects of consumer in a certain way. Those things are happening and evolving, and we are also at a learning stage. Still, we are trying to find out how we can strengthen the network management because of the distributed energy resources, which is coming. Like we have about 150 megawatt of rooftop solar, which is there. So there are generation points. We need to capture those inflow and outflow at that generation point. So we are working on that also. So there are a lot of things, both from the technical side, from the planning side, from the forecasting side, from the policy support side, from the regulatory process side. And of course, we have talked about the tariff, the time of day metering, and all those things. All these things are being parallelly discussed, and I'm quite sure things would shape up. We had not focused so much on islanding in the past. Even in large metros, islanding was discussed, but it was more on a theoretical concept. But going forward with distributed energy, battery storage, we may have to create small islands within an island itself. Like if I talk about a state or if I talk about a city, there the concept of islanding certain pockets would emerge when you have more of these, local generation and local consumption kind of situation when, renewable integration happens into the system. And therefore, we need to strengthen the concept of microgrids. We need to strengthen how the segregation of consumers, like suppose you have an industrial center or you have a commercial center. We need to find a way in which we are able to manage the load of that commercial center with these interventions. Like you have a battery, you have a solar RTS. So those concepts will evolve in course of time. And that is what we are experimenting in all possible way. As a progressive utility, we are taking all such steps. And I'm quite sure with time and the policy support and regulatory support, things will take shape very soon.
Yeah. Thank you for a great comment, sir. And thanks for giving all that information. Let me take the last comment of the day from Mr. Pathak to basically try and understand from him what are the specific initiatives or some specific projects, if we can talk about being implemented by Hero Future, that fall within this purview of this entire discussion, and what is the relevance for the company's growth, larger growth plans going forward when it comes to its ambitions to grow as a renewable energy developer are concerned.
So actually, means on that account, we had taken several steps, and now we are also taking several steps as we speak. So first of all, like we were the first solar wind hybrid, like you can say IPP, wherein we almost 4 and 5 years back we had commissioned that, and one of the first megawatt hour scale battery storage, we were the L1 in that NTPC bid, which for Andaman Nicobar, which they wanted to put a storage into their plants. Now, as an initiative, what we are trying to see that we want to be a learner. So, like as we have a global footprint, and so that UK is quite a mature market for ancillary services through battery storage. So we are in advanced stage of putting up 25 or 20 to 25 megawatt hour of battery storage for ancillary services. So that will be a good learning ground, which can be utilized for the Indian market. Another thing which we are doing is that we are basically trying to support various tier 1 C&I consumers for their RE100 and also for the net zero initiatives. As we are in deep discussion and we are doing like what kind of storage combo and all those things. Also, we are trying to do a pilot for green hydrogen itself, like producing a green hydrogen and converting it into fuel cell and a kind of storage mechanism by which we can try to create a kind of a pilot wherein we can supply a kind of microgrid or off-grid applications. So these are several initiatives where we are at different stages of discussions and investment, and we hope that within a couple of months we will be starting these activities on that. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Pathak, thank you. Thanks for all of that information. With that, we come to an end of this discussion. We have discussed a very lot of really important points, including Mr. Pande, who talked about the different options that are available in front of us: battery, pumped hydro, green hydrogen, and how of course there's a high cost with pumped hydro, but then the need of the hour is to have matching demand with solar generation. We had Mr. Gupta, who not just gave us a status update on the ambitious OSO project, but he has also talked about a lot of different regulatory interventions that can be made to ensure that this entire integration of RE with the grid happens smoothly, including two-part tariff, ensuring that RE is made dispatchable power with storage, etc. We also had Xiaodong talking about regulatory issues, having two-part tariff and compensatory battery storage, and ways to manage the cost issue of storage by having concessional finance, for example, or competitive auctions, or focusing more on manufacturing. We had Mr. Sinha talking about how cost reduction in solar has happened, and going forward, there's a battery technology, the way it is evolving, and even the way the entire mobility sector is evolving. We are going to have a very dynamic and modern system that will develop, and then it's also going to be at some level a challenge for DISCOMs to live up to all that demand variability, and what are the different solutions available to address all of those things, including digitization and having shifting load, for example, through tariff fixation, etc. And of course, we had Mr. Pathak gave us a very good understanding of the technical side of things when it comes to how RE is. He said RE is a good source of power, but that it's not predictable, and therefore it has no inertia, right? So managing RE to that extent becomes difficult, and why it becomes difficult. And that is why storage is required. And then he's saying that we, of course, need things like VGF. And thanks also, Mr. Pathak, for giving us a sense of Hero Future Energy's own plans in these very crucial areas. With that, we come to an end of this discussion, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you for your time. Please carry on. And we really look forward to hosting you again on this platform. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the detailed discussion. Thank you, Sudhir, for covering all the important angles around the topic. I hope you all are finding these sessions informative and are filtering out the learnings. Use the hashtag ET Solar Congress and share these learnings with your friends and colleagues.